Great, thank you. Welcome, everybody. I do believe we have we have a packed agenda over the next several days. So if we could call the roll.
Yes. Commissioner Ahmed.
Here.
Commissioner Akutagawa.
Here.
Commissioner Anderson.
Here.
Commissioner Fernandez.
Here.
Commissioner Forniciari.
Here.
Commissioner Kennedy.
Here.
Commissioner Lamons.
Here.
Commissioner Sadwani.
Here.
Commissioner Sinai.
Here.
Commissioner Taylor.
Present.
Commissioner Toledo.
Here.
Commissioner Turner. Oh, she's out. Commissioner Vasquez.
Here.
Commissioner Yee.
Here.
All present except for Commissioner Turner.
Great, thank you. All right, any general announcements? All right, hearing none, we will move to public comment for the morning. Raul, could you read the instructions?
Yes, Chair. One moment.
Yep.
In order to maximize transparency and public participation in our process, the Commissioners will be taking public comment during their meeting by phone. There will be opportunities to address the Commissioners regarding the items on the agenda. There will also be opportunities for the public to submit general comments about items not on the agenda, and that is what we are calling for right now for general comments. Please note that the Commission is not able to comment or discuss items that are not on the agenda. The Commission will advise the viewing audience when it is time to submit public comment and then allow time for those who wish to comment to dial in. To call in on your phone, dial the telephone number provided on the live stream feed. Second, when prompted, enter the meeting ID number provided on the live stream feed using your dial pad. Third, when prompted to enter a participant ID, simply press the pound sign. Once you have dialed in, you will be placed in a queue from which a moderator will begin unmuting callers to submit their comment. You will also hear an automatic message to press *9 to raise your hand, indicating that you wish to comment. When it is your turn to speak, the moderator will unmute you and you will hear an automatic message stating, the host would like you to talk and to press *6 to speak. You will then have time to provide your comments. Please make sure to mute your computer or live stream audio to prevent any feedback or distortions during your call. Once you are waiting in the queue, be alert for when it is your time to speak, and again, please remember to turn down the live stream volume. The process for making a comment will be the same each time. Please begin by dialing the telephone number provided on the live stream feed and following the steps as I have just described. These instructions are also on the website. Thank you. Chair?
Great, thank you. Do we have anybody in the queue?
We do not have anyone in the queue at this time.
Great, let's give 2 minutes to 9:40.
Madam Chair, if you like, I could give a brief update on the status of the census litigation.
Yes, let's do that.
The only update is after the Ninth Circuit ruled that the time would be extended till the end of October, an emergency appeal was filed with the Supreme Court. To date, they've not taken any action on that, so it's all still in limbo.
Great. Thank you for the update. Yes, Commissioner Anderson.
On that council, does that mean that it's sort of null and void, or does the first, since it was appealed, does it still mean October 31st is the current? That's what's going on, or are things actually on hold?
October 31st is the current date, although I'm not sure that census has complied with that yet because of the appeal. The order is still in effect. The Ninth Circuit did not continue the stay on the December date, but that's 3 months away, so.
Did not continue to stay.
They just said it was not necessary at this time.
So implication being that they're just, you know, if they could stick with the December 31st?
They could.
Do we have anybody?
We do not have anybody in the queue at this time.
Great, thank you. Alrighty, let's move on. We're going to have a slight change in the order of our agenda because we have a new addition to the team. So with that, I will hand it over to Commissioner Ahmed. Did I say your last name right? I don't want to spend all the Ahmed.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yep, great.
Thank you for the adjustment in the agenda as well. We would just like to take a moment to welcome Daniel Claypool, our new Executive Director for the 2020 CRC. We are extremely excited to have you on board, and we are ready to put you to work. Before I turn the floor over to my fellow commissioners, is there any opening remarks you would like to make, Mr. Claypool?
First of all, I'm extremely excited to be here. And if everybody will hold their breath, this is what I look like. So, might be the last time, but yes, it's so exciting to be part of this process in general, and to be able to go all the way through 2 cycles is probably more than I could ask for professionally, but here I am, and we're going to get moving. So you tell me what you'd like me to do, and I'll tell you what I think I can do, and we'll get there. Okay?
Great. Thank you so much. I was hoping that we can take 2 minutes or less per commissioner to sort of share with you, Mr. Claypool, our vision for the role and our vision for our work moving forward. Madam Chair, I just wanted to check in with you, your thoughts about how to proceed forward with this.
I was not quite prepared for this, so maybe if folks, and I'm not sure others were either, so maybe if we want to do a hands up if you have urgent remarks, and then we can go from there. Does that sound all right?
Sure.
Does anyone have initial thoughts? Yes, Commissioner Sidlani.
I certainly didn't have anything prepared. I didn't know we were going to do this, but since no one else wanted to jump in, I would just say welcome, Mr. Claypool. We're very excited to have you on board and to be moving this process forward. You know, I think that we really, I guess, speaking on behalf of all of us who are here, or just myself, perhaps is more appropriate, we're very excited about the experience that you had from 2010, and I think, you know, 2020 is going to be a whole new ball game, obviously, given COVID, given changes in the law since that time. So we're really excited to have you on board and hit the ground running, and we welcome you.
Thank you.
Yes, is that Commissioner Fernandez?
Yes, I'm incognito over here today. Yes, I also wanted to welcome you, and I am excited that you do have the experience from the 2010. This is 2020. We have 14 new commissioners, our ultimate goal obviously is the same, but we may have different visions. We welcome your advice, but there's also 14 new people with new ideas that we're super excited to have you on board. So thank you very much for being here today, and you're going to be busy.
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Great. And just as a facilitator's note for my fellow commissioners, if I neglect to see you, please feel free to take it upon yourself to give me a hey or, you know, chair, as I may not see you waving. So just throughout the day, please feel free to make sure that I acknowledge you. Alrighty, thank you, Mr. Claypool, for joining us today and taking on this huge task of helping to facilitate the Commission's vision for the massive task ahead. We are glad to have you on board, and we're excited to get to work. So thank you.
Yeah.
Great. All right. Let's move to agenda item 4. Any commissioner updates? General updates is sort of open mic. Commissioner Sinai.
I did, Commissioner Turner and I had a great meeting before she took off for a mystery vacation. And we met with the Center for Civic Design, and they gave us a lot of really good food for thought of what we may be, what we're needing, just food for thought on input, civic engagement, how technology can support us. The truth is we're in the middle of civic tech innovation, it being in the state of California. And so it will, when looking at job descriptions for IT and communication, all those things, we really need to think through the civic design piece. Having said that, you can hire others to help those staff figure out how to do civic design. I didn't have time to write down my notes, but I just wanted to say that it was a really helpful conversation, and it may behoove us all. Part of the reason to have the conversation was to see if it made sense to bring someone in to talk to us as part of the outreach and engagement subcommittee, and I think it would be helpful to have someone like these folks, just to kind of help us think through everything from how we're doing our agendas. You know, right now that's one of our biggest practical complaints is we don't have all the attachments to the agenda. We've got to run around looking for it. What happens when you're looking for old documents? How do you find old agendas and documents? So all of that to how do we engage and create different tools? So I just wanted to put that out there, that conversation was had, and it will come to all of us so that we can all learn together.
Commissioner Kutagawa.
I just wanted to just make a quick request of all of the commissioners. I'll also follow up via email. I apologize, I did mean to do it this weekend, and my day job just really got in the way a little bit here. But I wanted to, actually, I shouldn't say it got in the way. Actually, my day job had to be the priority this weekend. I should say it more that way. So I don't want anybody thinking that I don't care about my job. So I care about both these jobs. But I did want to make an announcement or a request of all of the commissioners on the agenda for next week. And I am very conscious about what Commissioner Sinai just said about the creation of the agendas, this experience of putting together the agenda and really thinking farther in advance has made it very clear that I think we got to try to get ahead of some of this. And so one of the things that we have put on the agenda for next week is a conversation or discussion around major milestones between now and at least March, so the next 6 months. So we could start identifying the big pieces that we do need to be focusing on, so that hopefully both as a commission, but also for whoever is going to be chairing the future meetings, you'll also have an idea of some of the major items that you must be thinking about in terms of what needs to be on the agenda, along with many other things that will be coming up. And so I'm making a request for all of the subcommittees, but specifically the subcommittees where we'll have ongoing work. I'm conscious that some of the subcommittees will be phasing out because it's specific to the hiring of staff. But for the subcommittee chairs or leads, if you could be thinking about the major milestones that all of us as a commission need to be aware of. If you could start putting a list down, putting major dates down, and if you could submit something in writing if possible so that we could be using that as a discussion piece. If you could send that to the staff, they will compile all of the major milestones. If it's sounding like it's going to overlap with the Gantt chart, yes. We will be putting it into the Gantt chart, but for the time being right now, to make it easy, I'm just going to ask that each of the subcommittees take the responsibility of thinking about what your major milestones are. I know that the Gantt chart committee has put together their thoughts on it, and that was really helpful. But I think we need to get input from each of the subcommittees as well too, and especially around the major dates. And then that way, then the staff could collect all of those. We could use that as discussion as part of the milestones conversation. And then it will be also embedded into the Gantt chart as well too. And I see that Commissioner Sinai has.
Yes, Commissioner Sinai.
I'm going to say this. I appreciate everything the chairs are doing, but I do strongly ask that the chairs please follow up with the committees who have worked. We do have a plan, and we did have speakers scheduled, and we had a way we were thinking this through. Decisions have been made, and we'll just announce that, hey, we knocked you off the agenda. Please come back to those who are working on items on the agenda to make sure they haven't talked to the community, they haven't created things. This shouldn't be unilateral. It should be really, we're all working really hard, and we should be following up and making those decisions. It's okay to move things around because we need to, but let's talk to the folks who've already done the groundwork to make sure that they can refigure it out. Just because the chair doesn't understand the logic doesn't mean that there wasn't logic there, or yes, there was other priorities, but let's have conversations and not just tell someone, sorry, you've been pushed out.
Yeah, and I think that's why having this milestones conversation is going to be helpful, because I think there's competing agenda items that we do need to balance. And so I think that's why we felt that having this conversation would be helpful to ensure that we don't inadvertently displace an agenda item, and then we don't inadvertently also get behind on an agenda item as well too. And so it's with that in mind that we've put this on the agenda for next week, and that I'm requesting the commissioners who are leading the subcommittees to help us put these milestones into place with some major dates so that we could see it in the entirety of the big picture.
Thank you. And Mr. Claypool, I'm hoping as you're hearing that the big pinch point right now is, I think, creating agendas several weeks out. And I think we would welcome any support you might have in terms of smoothing out that process. It's been quite difficult. So just as a flag for you.
Certainly, and it was difficult for the prior commission as well, particularly in the startup. And I hear a little bit of the frustration that comes with everyone trying to hit the ground running. And I will listen and I'll learn.
Great, thank you. Okay, any other updates? Alrighty. Council update.
I don't have anything other than what I did.
Great. Let's move into the subcommittee updates. I know we just went through most of this last week, but want to make sure that if folks had any work in the intervening days, that they have a chance to give any updates. So we'll just go in the order here. Our census subcommittee.
very briefly in the last meeting, you all had instructed us to ensure that Senator Feinstein was aware of our position. We have done that. We sent those letters on. We received an immediate response from her staff members saying they're happy to receive this information and that they support they are actively advocating for the same.
Great, thank you. Questions? All right, seeing none. Our Chief Counsel Subcommittee, you'll have you'll have more of the space the rest of this week, but any updates for the public?
I would just say one thing. We did have an opportunity to meet with former Chief Counsel Miller and just to get a little bit more information about what the job entails day to day, what he did day to day and through the 2 years that he was with the time that he was with the commission rather. And also just got feedback around the position and other aspects of the role. So we'll talk more about that in executive session. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Questions? Seeing none. Our Communications Subcommittee. Yeah, I'm not sure, Commissioner Taylor.
Yeah, I just think we know that we will discuss our process in closed session. I think we all received the update that we lost one candidate withdrew today. So we will be interviewing 4 candidates on Wednesday, and we'll proceed from there.
Great, thank you. Our Finance Subcommittee.
NSTR, is that right?
All righty. Troubleshooting Subcommittee.
Safe to say NSTR.
Yeah. Yeah, we didn't actually meet, so
got it.
I think that says it well.
Roger that. Alrighty, Gantt chart.
Just 2 things. I've gone back in and updated some of the dates, particularly on the selection process, because that was not a priority when we first presented it, that being previous to where we are, but we do want it to be reflective of the entire process. And second of all, we will be turning this over to the executive director, but in the meantime, any input to it can go to staff, and staff can compile and share with us so that what we hand over to the executive director will be our best effort at this point. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Questions? Commissioner Fornaciari?
Yeah, I just want to follow up with the Gantt chart and what Commissioner Akutagawa mentioned earlier about the request from the subcommittees. We also wanted to request that the executive director work on there's the second part of the Gantt chart. There's what's the plan for putting the office together, for hiring the staff, or what are the milestones there, and I just want to make sure that didn't get lost.
Great, thank you. And on the topic of the agendas, actually, I was wondering if maybe, Mr. Claypool, we have already calendared out the rest of the year in terms of meetings. I know I would find it helpful if we just had a calendar with who is chairing each committee. For the whole commission, as well as for all the subcommittees, it would be really helpful in planning out the sequencing of any agenda topics so that we know which commissioners to reach out to in advance of planning said agenda. That would be helpful.
So
I'm not sure.
we have
Okay,
the
yeah.
email, so I understand, we have the email for the chair and the vice chair for the meetings, but you want the same one for all of the subcommittees as well?
No, sorry. We have just a rotation laid
Okay.
out, not a schedule. And so
Right.
if we could just attach dates to that rotation so that we know the next meeting is next week, the 20th, who is chairing that meeting? The next meeting is in November, who is chairing those meetings just for the rest of the year? That way, again, if I'm on my subcommittee thinking about, 4 agendas out, which commissioner should I reach out to?
I believe, go ahead.
Yes, Commissioner Fernandez.
I did forward that information to Raul that has like all of the dates that we have from here to December, and I identified the chair and sub-chair, so Raul can
got it.
forward that to Mr. Claypool. I don't think it's been forwarded yet because it's his first day today, so we should be able to get that, and then if you can send it out to all the commissioners. I believe
Absolutely.
that's what Chair Vasquez.
And actually should probably be posted to our website,
I don't see why not.
right?
If it
Commissioner
goes out
Sinai?
to everybody.
One thought, was to make sure that when we post an agenda, that we post the chair and the vice chair's names on the agenda, so we're all aware, including the public, who the chair and the vice chair will be for that meeting.
It is also a great upgrade to our agendas. Yes, Commissioner Anderson?
Question about on the Gantt chart. If we're turning this over, where will we be able to find this document? From continuing on, and as it gets updated, so we can check in and go, oh, right, I agree with that. Oh no, I have to change something. Where will it be posted? Where will we find it?
Raul, is it in the Google Docs,
I'm sorry.
the Gantt chart?
The Gantt chart is currently posted on the website. I don't know.
Where would that be?
I don't know if the subcommittee posted it to Google Docs.
No. And where would one find it on the website? Under, what would that be under?
It's with last week's handouts. Can I send you a link?
Okay. No. If I yeah. So but is
I
that
think
where?
if you go to meetings,
Well, I would suggest that the subcommittee post it on to the Google Docs, and that way everybody can access it. That'd probably be the easiest as a working document.
A shared Google Doc. And similarly, then that was also going to be our floating agenda items. That was also going to be a Google Doc. I don't know if that's might have fallen from last week to this week. So we have 2 floating Google Docs or continual Google Docs out there.
Well, the discussion that I recall about the floating agenda items was that several commissioners were going to be working on a list and sending that to the chair. If the chair wants to send that to me, then I can post that up with Google Docs. I know that during our last meeting on Saturday, talking about the agenda, we did have a few suggestions from other commissioners besides the ones in the meeting, but there wasn't a per se grouped list, is what I want to say.
so I do have a email from Commissioner Fernandez, I believe, that lists several future agenda item topics.
Right,
I
we
think
had
Commissioner
that one.
Fornaciari, did you say you were going to start, or you had started a Google Doc? Yeah.
Commissioner Sinai put up a Google Doc with several agenda items on it and shared it with, so it's, okay, it's on Google Drive. Don't go to Google Docs, go to drive.google.com. And it is, I'm not sure though how extensively it was shared.
Yeah. I don't have access to it, as a by the way.
I do. I'm not sure who else it's been shared. Ah, I see.
Yeah, Raul, you have access, but actually it's only with the former the current or former chairs or upcoming chairs. So we need to probably just share this with everyone
Yes.
as a starting place. So I think I can adjust that and make sure it's shared with everyone.
Commissioner Sidwani?
Yeah, I think planning for no one individual's fault ends up becoming just a bit of a problem. And I'm wondering if, I mean, we have the Gantt chart committee, and I don't mean to put extra work on you, but I'm wondering if we want to expand that slightly to like short-term, long-term planning, so that there's a small committee. Perhaps they can work directly with the executive director, who in turn, given, serial meeting restrictions and such things, can work with whoever the incoming chair is. But that committee, or maybe it's a separate one, I don't know, but could maintain a list of all of these pieces, could maintain a Google Doc, so that we don't continue to have these kinds of miscommunications and lags. And I think one of the biggest challenges is we're constantly like pushing information to one another, and we're never sure, especially because of the rotating chairs, we're never really sure who to push it to at what point, and it's just really confusing. So I'm wondering if we want to have a committee take on a little bit more of that, or perhaps now that Mr. Claypool's here, you're going to be the glue that really gets this together. But I think that we need a better solution for how to work together under these constraints that we have around, talking to one another, et cetera.
Commissioner Kutagawa?
If I could speak on this, just having gone through this agenda setting process, I just want to say there's a couple things that I think we're trying to balance. So one is the suggestions that the commissioners are sending, and trying to look out ahead, and also discussing and trying to determine whether or not conversations or discussions that are happening during current commission meetings need to also then be added to the agenda. And then depending on the amount of time we have also impacts how much we could leave on the agenda and how much we're pushing out. What Commissioner Sinai did put together was very helpful. It served as a both as a guide and also a checkpoint to see, do we make sure that we need to include this. But I know for me last week, I was also, or over the last 2 weeks, knowing that I was going to be chairing the meeting, I was also taking notes and asking, as Commissioner Fornachari and as the two of us met with Raul and Marion, also going through all the discussion items that we had, things that were brought up during the last week's meeting and the previous meetings about quote unquote agenda items that we needed to also put on for the future. And so I think those are also some of the balancing acts that that I felt like we were trying to meet. And then as I think having the vice chair who is going to be then chairing the next meeting is also helpful too, because I will tell you that part of our discussion between Commissioner Fornachari and I was that, okay, we're either not going to be able to fit this on this agenda, or is this one that we need to put in more urgently? Do we move it to the next agenda? And so in that sense, I believe that he was also starting to build the agenda for the meetings that he'll also be chairing, but that doesn't take into account discussions that we'll have that will also then need to be agendized. Now, in this case, either for the 28th, since we have a couple more days before we have to post the agenda, or in the meetings that he'll be chairing in November, which is the first, I think, week or 2 weeks of November. And so I just wanted to just put that out there for all of us to consider. That's also why having these milestones are also going to be helpful, because we could then start to identify for those chairs who will be leading those meetings will also be able to keep that in mind, because there's what we're running up into is also there are competing, I think, agenda items that some of the subcommittees that are just getting up to speed are going to need to have time on the agenda, which may end up also bumping some of the other committees too, which is, through no disrespect, but I just wanted to just say that I think those are some of the balancing acts that I felt like we were trying to manage as we were building the agenda for the next 2 weeks after this, and then possibly further out than that. And I don't know if Commissioner Planachardi wants to also speak to that, since we just finished up a very long session on agenda building.
Yeah, Saturday, 2.5 hours working on the agenda. It was a long conversation. I think you kind of summarized that, but Director Claypool, I mean, two big things, right? We're having struggle with building agendas and tracking documents. So I'm hoping you can roll up your sleeves and dig in and help us out with that soon.
Got it.
So
Yes, Director Claypool.
the prior commission used a system where everything flowed through the chair and the vice chair. They kept a log, and in the log it was passed on, and they would cross off things that had occurred and things that had been completed, and add on to that log as it processed forward. And then the vice chair typically kept the log, and then when that person became the chair, then the next vice chair would pick it up as well. And everything flowed up through the chair and the vice chair, and then out to me, and then would flow back through. I would work with staff to get the things that commission needed to be done. And then we would work with individual commissioners when the vice chair and the chair said, please work with Commissioner Fonashari on this because he's got the lead on it, and make sure that we have all the documents. So there is a great need to corral, if you will, all of these documents you have, because many of them, I believe, need to be posted to the public if they're going out to you, at least at some point. And so we need to make sure that we're fulfilling that obligation to the public. And there's also a need to, when we do that, to make sure that we're maximizing our efforts by minimizing the amount of overlap and amount of push on each other. So when this meeting's over, I will talk with Marian and Raul and Commissioner Fernandez is here about where everything is, if you will. On my first day, I'm listening and I'm thinking, okay, we probably need to do this, probably need to do that. By tomorrow and Wednesday, we'll have a better idea, I think, of maybe a possible solution that will be acceptable to all of you for kind of funneling this information and making sure that we're keeping track of it. So that's what I intend to do.
Commissioner Sinai.
Thank you, Mr. Claypool. I'd like to reiterate what the two commissioners said in the opening remarks, that this is, a new commission.
Mm-hmm.
And we have done a heck of a lot of work. As I said earlier, I already have a notebook full of notes from everybody. And so we really are open and excited for you to hear what we're saying, see what we've done, and then build on that and bring in what may be helpful from 2010. But maybe today not bring up everything that 2010 did, because we're still really working hard to be 2020. So thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I'm going to move us along. Do we have any updates from outreach and engagement? Commissioner Sinai.
NSTR, since we have an action item later.
Yes, we do. Right. The Community of Interest Tool Subcommittee.
Commissioner Akutagawa, do you have any anything to share at this point?
Nothing to share.
Great.
Okay, just to say that Commissioner Akutagawa and I will be meeting with the statewide database team on Friday of this week. A question did come to me as to whether commissioners should be sharing feedback with the statewide database team or with the subcommittee. At this point, my sense is that any feedback that goes into the statewide database team, they'll be compiling and sharing back to the subcommittee. If commissioners want to share feedback with staff, staff can compile that feedback and share it with us, hopefully before Friday, so that when we sit down with the statewide database team on Friday, we are well prepared. Thank you.
Great. All right, everybody. So you have a deadline to get feedback into the committee chairs before Friday. Yes, Commissioner Lamont.
This is feedback, for example, having gone through the tool with the data, statewide database. Are you wanting additional? If I understand you correctly, the feedback that we gave them in the process is sufficient unless we have something additional we want to say?
Yeah, they should be collecting that and be able to reflect it back to us.
Okay.
But if you have anything else, please route it through staff, and staff will get it to us in time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Right. Any other questions on the Community of Interest tool?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Just to avoid Bagley-Keene problems, if there's any recommendation that's going to come on behalf of the full commission, that should be brought up and discussed. Perhaps reschedule the COI tool subcommittee for later this week after they hear input from any of the other commissioners.
Got it. So I will not cross this committee off of my list and make a note to revisit this agenda item 7H, perhaps on Thursday. Great. Okay. Yes, Commissioner Lamont.
Can you clarify what council just said? I'm kind of confused.
Well, for example, if there was a recommendation about what languages it should be in, all of you individually can give that to the statewide database, but if you want a recommendation from the full commission, that's something that would need to be discussed during an open meeting before it's presented to the statewide database.
I think that was the plan, right? In what Commissioner Kennedy had just laid out?
I'm not sure.
Well,
no,
not so much in what I had laid out, but my understanding is that we are on the agenda for the meeting next week, and Commissioner Akutagawa and I had hoped that by having our meeting with the statewide database team this Friday, then we can bring recommendations to the full commission next week.
Got it.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Got it. Okay. So then we can close this agenda item since we will have a recommendation and possible action for next week. Yes, Commissioner Anderson?
Just before you, since we go on, there was an I under this, which I don't see listed, the line drawing group.
Oh.
Subcommittee.
Yeah, yes, if you have an update.
And also VRA.
and
oh,
yeah,
all right.
VRA.
VRA.
I don't know, Commissioner Sadwani, do you want to say anything about? I'm not sure which one you want to put. I can't remember which was first, but.
Either one. Why don't we start with line drawing? Since you brought it up, I can just report back, and please feel free to jump in, Commissioner Anderson, that Commissioner Anderson and I are working through to identify a list of line drawers. We've been talking to folks to figure out if the list that the state auditor's office had maintained is still relevant and accurate. We're looking at various options in terms of the request for proposals, and as well as other potential options that we might be able to utilize to get bids from line drawers. And so that process is actively ongoing. We have a number of conversations that we are attempting to set up to kind of help inform that process as well. Commissioner Anderson, do you want to add anything to that?
That sums up very well. Yeah, no, yeah, just yeah, so two-prong approach, and coming at it from different angles, so to get the best.
That's right. And then if I may, if we can also do a quick VRA piece, and again, Commissioner Yee, feel free to jump in. Commissioner Yee and I talked last week. We've similarly kind of set up a plan. I think one piece, there's a lot of wonderful VRA experts who are out there. I've been working on compiling a list of some of them. Our first step is to talk with Angelo Anchetta. We're working on trying to just find the right date to do that, just to see if it makes sense to have him come back to the full committee, or if a conversation with him can just help inform how we go about doing it. Because there's so many wonderful experts out there, it doesn't make sense to bring 15 different individuals in to speak to the commission. So how can we glean as much information from everybody that will be the most useful for commissioners? And I think throughout the week I might start reaching out to folks, or folks, maybe it's better if you all have specific pieces in terms of VRA training. Many people have said that they would like additional training. If there are specific things that just seem unclear, or that you would want additional information on, if you could email that to staff, that they could then share that with us, so that we can kind of put together, we can have a better sense of how to plan something for us, and to ensure that we're actually meeting the needs of the commissioners. That would be very helpful. Commissioner Yee, do you have anything else that I've forgotten or that you'd like to add?
No, that's all good, Commissioner Sadwani. Part of it's a question of timing too. We don't want to get the VRA training in too late, but there's also too early probably also, when it's still all abstract, and we're not really thinking enough about maps to really have questions in our minds that would be useful for the actual work. So I could encourage you all to give VRA some thought and think about what do I need, and when will I need it to move forward in this process.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think the more we know about the VRA, it'll help inform us also when it comes to hiring outside counsel as the process moves forward. So please do give that some thought based on what the training that we have received thus far, and what might still be helpful for you all. Thank you. Oh.
Any questions for our subcommittee? All right, seeing none. Thank you everyone for your updates. What I'd like to do right now is looking at the rest of our agenda, knowing that we have, oh yes, Commissioner Ahmed.
Commissioner Ahmed has her hand.
Yes, sorry.
Sorry, I didn't have questions for the subcommittee, but we do have two more subcommittees that haven't reported. That's the Lessons Learned subcommittee. Nothing new to report at this point, but I caught that we're using an acronym for something. So we should probably define what that is. I don't know if Commissioner Kennedy, you have anything for that subcommittee? No? Okay. And then Commissioner Fernandez and I are sitting on the hiring of the Deputy Executive Director subcommittee. So we are working on finalizing the duty statement for that. Commissioner Fernandez, is there anything additional to report at this time?
No, I think we did kind of descriptions, so we're converting that to a duty statement, and we're just, once that's done, then it can go to the different, I guess, hiring authority. It goes to finance and Cal HR and controller's office. So that's update.
Commissioner Lalonde.
Is there a timeline on that process when we can anticipate all the administrative processes complete?
The information we received, I'm probably going to hand it over to Raul, but what we initially talked about was 3 weeks in terms of it getting through the Department of Finance, then California Human Resources, and then to the State Controller's Office to actually establish the position. So, Raul, if you could provide more information on that.
So that hasn't changed. It doesn't go to CalHR, by the way. No, it goes to Department of General Services HR, who acts on our behalf. And they'll provide that submittal. That's really the best estimate right now, the 3 weeks.
Uh, 3 weeks from last week or 3 weeks from this week?
Well, probably 3 weeks from the time that duty statement is finalized. Nothing's been, in other words, that's part of the submittal, and so we haven't done a submittal. So you really can't start ticking the clock until until you've initiated the process. So what we're doing right now is an internal process to put together that duty statement.
Okay, can I clarify, Chair, what my question?
Yes, please.
So when I say a timeline, I'm talking end to end. So it sounds like the 3 weeks is just the processing time once something is submitted. So I'm thinking more overall, like from whatever it is we need to do to the final step to be able to take the action that we want to take. What are we looking at timeline? And it can be an estimate. I understand that it may not be exact, but it sounds like more than 3 weeks, maybe 4 at this point, depending upon when we are targeted to get the document submitted. And then it sounds like the 3 weeks starts from there. So that's what I'm trying to understand, the full timeline.
Well, let me get back to you then. If
Okay,
you want something
thank you.
that specific, let me go ahead and get back to you.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, Director Claypool.
To be clear, Commissioner Lamont, you want to know, in my mind, the entire process to the day that person walks through the door, that timeline, am I correct? That time it takes to advertise, the time it takes to set up the interviews, the time it takes to, then is that correct?
Well, in this case, all those steps shouldn't be required based on
okay.
what I understand, but you're right that from where we sit today to our anticipated day of them walking in the door,
Right.
in this very specific situation that we're talking about, as it
Okay.
relates to the Deputy Executive Director, what is that timeline? That's what I
Okay, just want to be clear, thank you.
That's why it'll take time.
Great. Alrighty. Oh, and just to clarify, thank you for Commissioner Ahmed for the public. VRA is Voting Rights Act. And so I will do my best to not use that acronym.
And sorry, Madam Chair, also NS something something that I didn't even catch.
I think that's the nothing to report acronym.
So is nothing significant to report or nothing new to report? I've heard a combination. So just throwing that out there.
Thank you for supporting our language accessibility and not using jargon for the public. Alrighty, what I would like to do, looking at the rest of our agenda, knowing that we have interviews for General Counsel and Communications Director scheduled for tomorrow and Wednesday, we also would like to take some closed session time to discuss our questions and make sure we have all of our ducks in a row for the interviews upcoming. Would my proposal to the commission, if we can get consensus, is that today, before we recess for the evening, I'd like to have ideally discussed and finalized the questions for both sets of interviews. I'm hoping that will be a process we can get done, hopefully after lunch. So to that end, and perhaps this is also a question for Raul, are you prepared, Raul, to give a budget update and an update on contracts, so items 10 and 11? Are you prepared to do that today before lunch?
Yes.
Okay. Do I have any objections from any commissioners about that proposed timeline? So that would leave items. So ideally, we have interviews Tuesday, Wednesday. Thursday, then we'll have item 12, discussion on civic public engagement, public education, outreach and engagement, and possible action. And a discussion of meeting dates and future agenda items, both of which we anticipate will be lengthy conversations. Does that sound like a plan for the week? Seeing head nods. All right. So just to reiterate for the public, the plan is right now to do items 10 and 11 before our lunch break. We will recess into closed session after we conclude items 10 and 11. We will be in recess, or we will be in closed session Tuesday and Wednesday, and we will reconvene in open session on Thursday for the final agenda items. And perhaps maybe, Raul, if you have a moment today, we could update the agenda that's posted on the website with at least these tentative times, particularly for Thursday.
You could go in and out of closed session if you wanted. For example, tomorrow afternoon, when there are no interviews scheduled, you could go into open session at that time, up to the commission.
I did consider that as an option. I thought perhaps since this is such a long week, folks might enjoy an afternoon. If we have an afternoon available, folks might enjoy an afternoon to re-engage in other priorities. Anyone feel strongly about one way or the other? Yes, Commissioner Fernandez?
I agree, and especially because we won't know what time we potentially would come back to open session, and I would hate to throw that out there and then have the public wait the whole day. So I agree with, and I appreciate that thinking of just wait until Thursday.
Great. All righty. Okay, so we have 30 minutes until our required break? Yes, mathing. We have 30 minutes, so I will hand it over to Raul for a budget update.
There's really been no change since last Thursday to today on Monday, and so I'm waiting for those reports to come in. Now that Mr. Claypool is here, I will be getting with him and going over really something more substantive as we start getting more information in.
Got it.
I was going to ask, there's not a lot of information, but any questions?
Okay, then. Item 11.
As far as the contracts and procurement, I've started work on the preliminaries for solicitation for the videographer. And I spoke a little bit with the finance subcommittee on that. They'll probably be looking at an initial draft and then get some feedback from other relevant subcommittees just in the formative stages. I did send some materials to, I guess it's the line drawers subcommittee. I'm waiting to hear back from them so we can actually talk about what the RFP needs to have in it, so that conversation can get started. I understand the other areas of interest, and those are good and helpful, But as far as a more concrete process is starting that discussion about the actual RFP. And we haven't had a chance to hold that discussion yet, because I think that was Thursday that we were checking in with each other.
Commissioner Sinai?
That brings up a great point, and I keep playing around, especially with what has been requested of all the subcommittees on planning. And that was part of why I was asking so many questions last time about timing. And I think it's important not to follow up with you offline. Like at the time, I thought it was a good recommendation to follow up with you offline, but I think we all need a lot more clarity on, and we had asked staff to, I believe we had asked staff to create kind of a cheat sheet on the different ways we can allocate funds, how much time it takes to create things, how much time, who needs to approve what, and all that. Because if we don't understand that as commission or as subcommittees, we don't really know how much time we have to plan or not right now. Like what was happening with the deputy executive director. We all feel very strongly that we want the deputy executive director here ASAP, but we keep hearing it may be a month, it may be this. And so we really, to be able to do what Commissioner Akutagawa has asked us for the next meeting, we need to know these bureaucratic timelines so that we can plan accordingly. If not, I'm completely frustrated right now because I've worked so hard and I feel like everything's just been thrown out and my input doesn't matter or my thinking. And it's been a lot of hours that Commissioner Vasquez and I have been working and talking with others. So we need that cheat sheet ASAP, and because we can't continue saying, wait, I'm confused. It's going to take 3 weeks. No, I'm confused. It's 6 weeks. I think what you're trying to tell us, and we are not hearing correctly because we don't know that information, is that we need ASAP to talk about the RFP for line drawing because we're going to run out of time. And I'm afraid that we're running out of time on different things, and we're not really aware of that because we still don't understand the bureaucratic system. And so therefore I ask that maybe during breaks or whatever, staff get together and create that cheat sheet for us because we need it to be able to do what we've been asked to do.
So that the request was for how long it took to do the different solicitations, right? So I received that on Thursday. I'm putting that together. The problem with having everything be ASAP is at some point in time, just contextually, other things come to the fore. I understand the frustration. With some of these processes, there isn't an absolute. And so when I say once documents are submitted, it takes approximately 3 weeks, it's because it takes approximately 3 weeks. It's like trying to look forward and thinking, once you make your offer, what's going to be required of the individual in terms of notice to their work to be actually able to come online. Well, we can guesstimate that. We'll have an absolute once that discussion occurs. And so at a certain point, while it is uncomfortable, working with general timeframes and approaches is probably the best thing that we have right now until we have more concrete information. But I will get you that, the commission, that those timelines, but just know again, they're approximate. They're guidelines, and I will get that for you today.
Yes, Commissioner Anderson, Commissioner Lamont, and then I also have a comment.
Thank you for that, Raul. And the line drawing committee did run into this. And actually, rather than saying a lump one number, what we'd really like are the steps involved. Because once we know the steps involved, we know what has play time in it. When, like, i.e., there's the actual putting together the solicitation, how long it actually takes from hey, this is what we would like, until it actually gets through and becomes a document that we can post. That's another step. Then there's once we post it, how long for to go out for, to post it for people to look at, and, i.e. the hiring period. Then there's our interview evaluation period. And then there's they would have to actually leave their job period. So those are distinct steps. If we can have steps like that in all the different processes, and specifically what we're looking at is what's the difference between an RFP1, an RFP2, what is an FB, the RFQs, why they're not going to work properly, the different types of solicitations, what's involved timeline in those, and putting those together, and who they might go through. So, and rather than the whole detail, we just want kind of little snippets of roughly, RFPs take 6 weeks, RFP2s only take that, they're slightly different, or whatever that might be. As well as, we don't want like one whole lump number. We'll put that together, but it's each of the different steps involved. So I think I'm saying that to hopefully that helps you in terms of what we're looking for. And please, does that make sense, or?
Oh, I completely understand, but it's like the request today to get the complete timeline for when the deputy director comes on board. That's why I couldn't respond except to say that, yes, I'll get that, I'll work on it. It's not, because I understand, you don't want the general. You want much more specific information, and that takes a little bit of thoughtful time to create that. And
well, actually, Raul, that's why I want to clarify here. We don't want a lump sum. We just want
you want the steps.
Yeah,
you want the steps
involved. Yeah.
Yes. Exactly. So to enumerate those and attach time to them isn't an off-the-cuff response. And so the answer is yes, I will do that. But that's why I couldn't provide that off-the-cuff in response to Commissioner Lamont's request.
Commissioner Lamont.
The first I want to say, Raul, I'm a fan. You know that. I think there's a little bit of, I am finding myself a little bit frustrated with this conversation because I think that we're going like from the vague to the weeds. And I was not asking either of those, actually. And so when we start talking about this idea of the person needing to give notice and all of that, I absolutely was not talking about that. When we discussed this last time, we were told it was 3 weeks. That was just the number that was thrown out. And so today, when that number was thrown out again, I know a week has gone by. So it just made me wonder, well, what are we referring to? So then I understood a little more clearly that it isn't 3 weeks from this discussion that we're having. It's 3 weeks from a step that commissioners are working on. So that means that it's not 3 weeks. So I think the problem when we say something like 3 weeks, or that's going to take 2 weeks, if we're talking about just a slice of it, then that is not an accurate representation for any of us to walk away from the conversation with. Because we then have in our head, okay, this is 3 weeks away, when in essence it's not 3 weeks away. And that's okay. I mean, I'm not complaining that it's 3 weeks or 4 weeks or 6. I just want to be clear. And I think to Commissioner Sanai's point, and I think as well as Commissioner Anderson, we just want to have enough information to be able to understand what we're agreeing to, what we're recommending, what we're supporting, etc., or what we can anticipate, because all of these things impact one another. So I'm not trying to frustrate you. I don't need to know when they need to give notice. What I need to know is the steps that we as the commission, including working with staff, have to do in order to solve the issue. And it was specific to the deputy executive director position, because last time we had no information about that. We had conversations in closed session. We left it, which dovetails into our challenges around what can be communicated when. So you have to, at least for me personally, I find that there's often times where we're in the dark. And to any fault of anyone, but we're kind of in the dark on certain things until we're not anymore. There were some things said earlier today that was a little surprising to me. Like, oh, really? Okay, but we won't. I won't worry about that. I guess it's getting handled. But I have that kind of feeling. I don't know if other commissioners have it too, where there are these aha moments. It's like, oh, well, what happened? Like something obviously happened. I have no idea what it was, but okay, I'll just live with that kind of thing. So, Raul, I know you're working very hard. I'll say that again. If we have this information that helps us navigate with you, and I hope that now that Mr. Claypool is here, that'll help with some of that. And we've been, patient around that. We've been saying, okay, we know we got to wait till we get our staff. So we're all chopping at the bit and we're ready to move. And so we're going to all ride this together. I don't want to frustrate you. I'm sure none of us want to be frustrated. And so I know we're figuring it out. So thank you for clarifying and thank you for listening.
Commissioner Ahmed, I see you, but I just wanted to say that I think the word, what I'm looking for is workflows, because most of us are not familiar with state bureaucracy, and so a workflow. What is the workflow to hiring our deputy executive director? With guesstimates of timelines, knowing again certain things are more in our control than others. But the workflows for each of these things, such as contracts, et cetera, would be helpful for planning. So that's what I have to say, Commissioner Ahmed. And then I saw someone else's hand.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a consideration. I'm sorry, are you all hearing background noise?
But we can hear you.
I have someone closing the window. Just a point of consideration in terms of process. What I heard was multiple commissioners telling Raul what would be helpful for us. And at times that quote unquote direction was different from one another. I think it would be helpful if we as a commission together decide what we would want in terms of next steps and relay that to the chair, and the chair give one set of direction to staff. Just so that, Raul's not saying, hey, here's a document with just dates, here's a document with step by step, here's another document with workflow. I just think it might be easier on everyone if we come up with some sort of process of how we want to communicate what we need as a commission to our staff rather than just individually, just for consideration.
Commissioner Anderson and then Commissioner Lamont.
I thank you, Commissioner Ahmad, for that. And I understand it's because we are, everyone's asking Raul, what about this? What about this? What about that? And I can see Raul like calmly, but ripping his hair out internally. And I really apologize for what we're bombarding you with, Raul. We do appreciate it. But I think what we're trying to do right now is come to a consensus on the information. I think where a lot of us are hitting the same thing. And we understand we must work with bureaucracy, but we don't quite know enough about it. And so we're trying to put in the proper terminology what we're looking for as a group, because what I say, and this comes down to using English words that mean different things at different times. So what I might say can be interpreted one way, and what Commissioner Sinai might say can be interpreted another. So I think what we're trying to do right now is we all want like a workflow for different items, whatever those items might be, if that's the proper terminology, workflow. I say it as time steps, or just the steps involved that we can estimate the time for. Some of them are pretty set. Others they're in flux. So I think we're all trying to get at that same item. So rather than doing it individually, I think that's going to be almost as confusing as all of us, talking to Raul directly. Now, is that I could be over speaking on that, but I'm seeing a few heads nodding. So So if that's we're hoping, and Raul, and Chair, I don't mean to overstep anybody, but I'm trying to get at a whole consensus kind of here.
Commissioner Lamont and then Commissioner Sidwani.
I'll pass.
Thank you.
I would just add, and I agree with everything everyone has said, and I again want to reiterate our support for you, Raul, but information is power, and we can make the best possible decisions when we have information. And I think, like Commissioner Anderson just laid out, as well as Commissioner Lamont, there's all these bureaucratic pieces that we don't know, right, as commissioners. And until we know them, we don't know what our options really are. And I think that for me, just in terms of consensus, the concern for me is when I don't understand the full range of options, for example, in the line drawer of the RFP process, or for the deputy executive director, what are the steps that we have to go through? Then I feel like my hands are tied. I don't really feel empowered to make those choices, which are ultimately ours as a commission to make. Instead, it leaves me feeling like, well, we're being led down a path, and maybe we want to go down that path, but we haven't had all of the full information to fully choose. And I get it. Like, it's difficult. Like, you're part-time, and there's a bazillion requests. But I think as we move forward, Mr. Claypool is here with us today. Hopefully, we'll also have a deputy executive director very soon, and we can begin filling additional roles. I think moving forward, I think just remembering that this information is powerful and helps us to better make better decisions. And I just want to encourage all of us to really push for that kind of information, because I do think it's important. And I mentioned in the last meeting, it was concerning for me after the fact that we supported that communications contract without seeing it, right? I mean, I feel like as commissioners, we need to be doing a better job asking these questions. And I think Raul and all of our staff who is to come, we need to ensure that we are being able to fully get that information, so that we can make the best choices possible.
Commissioner Lamont.
Yeah. I agree with Commissioner Sadwani, and I think our challenge, which we've talked about, not only is having the information, but the flow of information is difficult here. Like, this system, the way it works and how we can communicate with each other, etc., is very difficult, because if we're in a meeting and things are coming up we can't take action on, so we have to agendize it. So this idea that we can just have a discussion, tell the chair, this is what we want to do, where do we cross the line of making a decision and taking action on something versus not? And I'm not saying that is action or isn't, because I have no idea. It's sort of, I feel like our hands are tied consistently with even just being able to communicate. And then when we have not enough information, it just exacerbates the situation. And I think also, in your defense, Raul, you're talking to different ones of us. So some of us have certain information, and you and them, you probably have the most information out of all of us because you talk to the majority of us. So there are pieces of information that are among the 14 of us, but there's no mechanism oftentimes for that information without potentially violating Bagley-Keene, et cetera, to get to all of us. And I'm finding that to be very, very challenging. Executive Director Claypool, that is a frustration. So if there's anything as we move forward, do you see little tips and things you can offer to help us navigate this information sharing and how we get information and how we exchange it amongst us? I think that's going to be very, very helpful, and I really welcome it. I go back to this Deputy Executive Director. we got a little bit of information in that last meeting. Like, and that was sort of like we were kind of digging. Like it wasn't like we were presented, this is what happened, this is how far we could go, this is where we are in the process, this is what we can anticipate. And I think there's a funny thing about questions. As I said in a couple meetings back about subcommittees really trying to frame up what they're going to tell us so that we know and we can anticipate what's going to be. Because the more information you give, a lot of times it minimizes questions. And I think what happens with us is we end up asking a lot of questions and then we get responses that are all over the place, which aren't, because I didn't give Raul a directive, by the way, today. I didn't ask Raul to go and do anything. I just asked a question about timeline that then required something to happen. But that wasn't my intent, was to charge him with anything. It was just really to know, and for all of us to know, when can we anticipate the process for the deputy executive director to be completed and an offer made to that person. That's it. So it opened up a whole can of worms, which I think reveals the challenges that we have. So I think this is a good thing ultimately. And hopefully, again, Executive Director Claypool getting the opportunity to observe this and bring his experience to the table to hopefully help us navigate it in a way that we can be happy with. Thanks for indulging me, fellow commissioners.
All right. Any other comments? Okay. So I'm going to propose that we take our required break right now for 15 minutes. And then it seems like when we come back, we should just launch straight into our closed session. Am I hearing? No. Okay. Alrighty. So yes, Commissioner Lamont.
Do we need public comment before?
Oh, yeah. Wait.
When we come back, maybe?
Well, we still have several minutes before we have to take a break. So let's close our open session for today with taking public comment. And then when we reconvene after our 15-minute break, we will reconvene in closed session. Okay. So we will go to public comment right now, general comments and comments on any agenda items discussed thus far. Raul, if you would read the directions.
Yes. So to the public, the commission will advise the viewing audience when it is time to submit public comment. At this time, you're being asked to submit public comment regarding items on the agenda and items and general public comment. To dial in on your phone, dial the telephone number provided on the live stream feed. Second, when prompted, enter the meeting ID on the live stream feed using your dial pad. Number 3, when prompted to enter a participant ID, simply press the pound sign. Once you've dialed in, you will be placed in a queue from which a moderator will begin unmuting callers to submit their comment. You will also hear an automatic message to press *9 to raise your hand, indicating that you wish to comment. When it is your turn to speak, the moderator will unmute you and you will hear an automatic message indicating that the host would like you to talk and to press *6 to speak. You will have time to provide your comments. Please make sure to mute your computer or live stream audio to prevent any feedback or distortion during your call. Once you're awaiting the queue, please be alert for when it is your turn to speak and remember to turn down the live stream volume. The process for making a comment will be the same each time. Begin by dialing the telephone number provided on the live stream feed and following the steps I have described. These steps are also located on the website. Chair?
Great, thank you. And Katie, do we have anybody in queue?
We do not have anyone in queue at this time.
Great. Let's give 2 minutes while we wait. Commissioner Anderson?
Chair, I'm sorry, Raul, were we completed with number 11? Did we just sort of talk over you and shut you off there?
Unless there was more discussion by the commissioners, I had provided the information I needed to provide, or had to provide.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for checking, Commissioner Anderson.
It's funny how long 2 minutes feels. Chair, we do not have anyone in the queue at this time, and I did set a timer, so it's been 2 minutes.
Great. Thank you so much. All righty. So with that, we will break for 15 minutes and we will reconvene at 11:16 in closed session. You all should have received a different link from Christian for that closed session. So for the rest of the public, we will see you back on Thursday at 9:30.